For part 2, I would like to practice this grammar because people have lots of problems with it, okay? If sentences, the conditional, I'm going to say real or unreal. We're talking about unreal situations. True or false? We live in Bournemouth. We have our lessons on the beach. Of course, it's false. We don't live in Bournemouth, and we certainly don't have our lessons on the beach like that. I don't wear clothes like that. You don't wear no clothes like that, or very few clothes like that in our lessons. So it's not a real situation. True or false? We live in Bedford. We have our lessons in a classroom. Well, it's true. Most of us live in Bedford. That is not the nicest part of Bedford. That's probably the ugliest part, in fact. It's behind the bus station. It features our college principal playing his guitar, trying to raise money. We have our lessons in a classroom. That's also true. Not in that classroom, and at the moment, not in any classroom, but generally it's true that we live in Bedford and we have our lessons in a classroom. Maybe in our dreams, if we lived in Bournemouth, we would have lessons on the beach. But we don't live there, so we don't have lessons on the beach, okay? If you look at the form, we lived and we would have. But if you look at the meaning, we don't live there in reality, in the present. We don't have lessons on the beach in the present, okay? So what we're saying is unreal situations. When we're talking about the present or the future form, we say if plus a person, so in this case, if we, and then we use the verb in its past simple form. If we lived, okay? Of course, if the verb is are doing, okay, if you were doing this, you would blah, 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 then of course we can have it in a past continuous form, but the main verb, the auxiliary verb in some cases, past simple, okay? So if we lived in Bournemouth, we would have lessons on the beach. Second half, the person can be a different person, of course. If you lived in Bournemouth, I would go and visit you and we could have an ice cream on the beach. So we could change the person. And it's always would and then the bare infinitive form of the verb. Would have here, would go, would eat, whatever I said. Okay? On to the things not to forget. Don't forget, if and would is no good. The would and the if don't belong in the same half of the sentence. We would have lessons on the beach if we lived in Bournemouth. Okay, notice also punctuation. There's no comma in the middle of that one. No comma before if. If we begin with if we lived in Bournemouth, then we have a comma to mark where the subject of the sentence is, the subject of the main clause. If we lived in Bournemouth, comma, we would have lessons on the beach. Okay, whichever way you do it, the if half does not contain would. If and would is no good. Other expressions that use exactly the same form. This is, as I think I said in the previous video, it's our form of the subjunctive, okay? It's a way of talking about things if in a different world, in a different life, okay? And there are many expressions like this that are used in a subjunctive in other languages, or conjunctive sometimes. Other unreal expressions. If only I had wings, but I don't have wings. I wish I lived by the sea, but you don't live by the sea. It's time we went on a diet means we need to go on a diet. I wish we didn't have to practice grammar, but we do. We have to practice grammar. So let's move on with it now, and you can practice.
Unit 11, Recording 1.
1.
What would you do if you could take 6 months off work?
If my children were a bit older, I'd take them on a world tour. 2.
What would you do if you became world leader?
I'd try to make the gap between rich and poor narrower. 3.
What part of your body would you change if you could?
My hands. I'd love to have slim, elegant fingers. 4.
If you had to live on a desert island, what would you take with you?
I think I'd take a camera so I could record the experience. 5.
What would you rescue from your home if it was on fire?
I'd save as many of my books as I could. 6.
If you could change places with anyone, who would you choose?
If it was just for a day, I'd choose a supermodel. Or, if it were just for a day, I'd choose a supermodel. 7.
What would you study if you went back to school?
I'd learn Italian so I could read all those wonderful old Italian recipe books. 8.
What would you do if you only had 4 weeks to live?
I'd eat and drink anything I wanted.
Unit 11, Recording 3.
Researchers at Harvard University in the US studied 8,000 men for 65 years and found those who ate modest amounts of chocolate up to 3 times a month lived almost a year longer than those who didn't eat any. They concluded that this was likely to be because cocoa contains antioxidants called polyphenols, also found in red wine, which prevent the oxidation of harmful cholesterol. Antioxidants are also known to protect against cancer.
Although getting caught in the rain may make you feel cold and uncomfortable, this unpleasant experience will not in itself cause you to catch a virus. As the viruses that cause colds and flu are spread by tiny moisture droplets, you can only catch a cold or flu by breathing in moisture droplets carrying the viruses, often as a result of an infected person coughing or sneezing near you, or shaking hands with or touching an infected person. More people seem to catch colds and flu in cold weather because they spend a lot of time indoors together and are therefore more likely to come into contact with viruses. Make sure you wash your hands frequently and stand back from people with coughs and sneezes.
It depends on whether you are referring to the loose product or the brewed cup. Tea leaves have more caffeine than coffee beans before they are brewed. Prepared, however, tea is diluted quite a bit more than most coffees. A pound of tea yields 200 to 250 cups of tea, while a pound of coffee makes approximately 80 cups. This will of course vary depending on how strong you like your tea or coffee. It has also been found that about 80% of the caffeine content in tea is extracted during the first minute of brewing. So, if you want to reduce your caffeine intake, one suggestion is to discard the first brew and then make another cup using the same tea bag or tea leaves.
A dog may be a man's best friend, but not if the man is among the estimated 10 to 15% of the population that suffers from pet allergies. The allergen is a specific protein produced not in the animal's fur, but primarily in its skin and, to a lesser extent, its saliva. As the animal is stroked or brushed, or as it rubs up against furniture or people, microscopic flakes of skin, called dander, become airborne. Since all cats and dogs have skin, there are no non-allergenic breeds. However, since short-haired pets have less hair to shed, they send less dander into the air, so are preferable for those with pet allergies. Dogs are half as likely to cause allergic reactions as cats, but if you're allergic to furry animals, the only no-risk pets are fish and reptiles.
There are all kinds of popular theories that first thing in the morning is best because you will speed up your metabolism and burn more calories all day, that exercising before dinner will reduce your appetite, that exercise in the evening won't work because it will rev you up and keep you from getting a good night's sleep. However, many experts agree that our body temperature plays an enormous part in exercise and fitness performance, and that the body performs best when its temperature is naturally higher, which is at around 6 p.m. Muscular temperature also affects our flexibility and strength, so we are less likely to injure ourselves at that time of day and more likely to be able to develop a muscular physique.